What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another new episode of Fin and Football. Before we get into this episode, which is going to be a Dwayne Haskins film analysis, as you can read in the title, unfortunately, my software was giving me a problem with my computer, so I haven't been able to edit these videos before I upload them. So the videos are kind of choppy. It kind of has weird pauses. But hopefully for tomorrow's episode, after the draft stuff, I'll be able to get something going with editing wise, because I have an intro that I just made. I want to show you guys, and I want to be able to put highlights in here because it's kind of awkward without these highlights, so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. But for now, I guess it'll do. I didn't want to miss out on this pre-draft stuff. I have some pretty good notes. I have a lot of notes. So anyway, let's get right into the video. So as I said, this is going to be Dwayne Haskins, who I'm not really all that high on him. In another draft, in a better quarterback draft, I would say, I would have him as like a late second round pick at the most. Now, a lot of you guys, primarily Giants fans, are going to be pretty pissed off about it, but it's the truth. He's not mobile. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not a reason not to give somebody a first-round draft grade. But if you look at today's NFL, you don't have a lot of pocket passers left. And even a lot of those pocket passers have mobility to them. Aaron Rodgers, who doesn't use it as much anymore because he's getting older, and you're seeing a difference in his play. But the thing that was so great about Aaron Rodgers is that he was a very balanced quarterback. Dwayne Haskins can run for 3-4 yards if he has to, but he's not going to get much else. Aaron Rodgers is somebody who actually can really hurt you with his legs, and you totally forget about it at times, and it comes out in the worst moments in the fourth quarter when he's trying to make one of his signature comeback drives, and that's when it's key to have a mobile quarterback, and Haskins just doesn't have that. Another knock I have on him is his footwork is okay for a college quarterback. It's not great, but that's something you can fix in the NFL with great coaching. But it's just another thing that a team's going to have to work on, and there's a lot. His arm strength on short throws is good enough to be like around about average in the NFL, but it's definitely something that's going to need work if you want him to be your long-term franchise quarterback. His throwing motion is horrible. He uses way too much arm. It's not fast enough. Most of the time, sometimes it's too fast. His arm comes out and it looks kind of flimsy. Your throwing motion, you have to be tight, and it has to come a lot from your hips and from your lower body, which sounds weird, but if you pay attention, quarterbacks lean. This is where I wish I had video editing stuff that I could put in a video instead of me demonstrating for you guys, but it is what it is. But you want the lower body to be able to separate itself from the upper body as well. And you want the balance, and you want to get your power from leaning back and turning the hips. It's not all in your arm, all in your shoulder. If you do that, that is how you hurt yourself. You see it a lot in baseball players and pitchers primarily. And that's what requires you to get the Tommy John surgery. It's damaging your shoulder and those ligaments and everything. And eventually, if you're a quarterback that uses way too much arm, way too much shoulder, you're going to need to get the Tommy John surgery or something similar. He is very good at managing the ball. He doesn't turn it over very much, which is very good. He can read defenses at, I would say, in the NFL, pretty average rate. He reminds me of like an Alex Smith as far as like game managing and turning the ball over. He doesn't do it a lot, but when he does, it's pretty damn bad. And it's in the worst possible moments, but it doesn't come up often. So when you're drafting a quarterback, that's something to keep in mind. You don't want somebody who turns the ball over a lot, but if they can make the risk factor lower than the reward, then it balances itself out, which is what I think Dwayne Haskins has. He's a low risk as far as turnovers and a high reward. So another thing is he's very, very, very responsive to coaching. He's probably one of the easiest players, I think, to coach in this draft. And that's huge, especially for somebody who needs to develop as much as he does. He does all these little things right, and that's due to him being responsive to coaching. He's a great leader, also from coaching, and also from just a very good mindset overall. He knows when to get rid of the ball, and that comes from him being a pocket passer. He senses pressure very well. He can move around in the pocket, but he's not mobile. You know, somebody like Tony Romo, for example, was not a mobile quarterback, but he moved around very good in the pocket. Even Tom Brady kind of moves okay in the pocket. Not great, but he can make a man miss. And those are important factors when you have a pocket passer. If you have a pocket passer who can't get around pressure, feel the pressure in the pocket, you can't take him, and it's very hard to develop that. He also diagnoses man and zone very quickly, which is a very big difference. Zone, if you can find the right spots in a zone, like, for example, in a cover 2, sometimes the best thing to do is go straight down the middle. Take a tight end, put him in the seam, because the two safeties are kind of fanning out. So as they're fanning out, you strike right down that middle. The linebackers are going to fan out. You have the one middle linebacker, but me playing middle linebacker, you're usually responsible for a hook to curl, which basically is about in that short 5 yards and inside the hashes. So those are things that you want to think about when you're drafting a quarterback that knows how to diagnose man and zone quickly. Then the other thing is that he did run a fairly simple offense. He wasn't throwing the ball down the field a lot, but he was also kind of thrown into the starting role. So when you're thinking about first-round draft picks, future franchise quarterbacks, one of my biggest things is, did they at all play in a pro-style offense? And I don't see that with Haskins. He runs a lot of drags, a lot of slants, curls, which he was god-awful throwing curls. His timing was way off. Probably one of the worst as far as throwing the curl that I've seen. It looks like it's fairly simple, but the timing is something that's hard to get down. But if you want to be a first-round draft pick, you have to get that down. Those short routes, those are the bread and butter of offenses. When you look at slot wide receivers, they're a lot of times going to run drag, slants, curls, ins, outs. And Haskins does not have the arm strength to get the ball outside. A lot of his picks came from those outside routes and also getting the ball down the field. In today's NFL, you have to be able to force the ball downfield. That's why Patrick Mahomes was so successful this year. He can force the ball down the field with great arm strength. I mean, minus the fact he can do it without looking as well. I mean, that just adds a whole other thing to worry about. But that isn't really something you're looking for. If you find it, that's great. But you have to be able to force the ball down the field in today's NFL. And Haskins cannot do that. He doesn't have the arm strength to get there. He has a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. But when I was watching the film, I noticed that it was mostly inflated by screens and short yardage, that his receivers got a lot of yards after the catch. You know, he would throw a screen and it would go for a touchdown from his own 20-yard line all the way for a touchdown. So right there, that's a huge chunk. And they would run screen over and over and over again until it was stopped. And then it would take some short yardage. And yes, him being very good at recognizing zone helps in those short yardage routes, those slants, drags, whatever. But at the same time, his receivers had to be able to get it down into the end zone. You know, him throwing it there, 5 yards. And in an open area, yes, that's a big deal. But at the same time, you have to have a receiver who can take it with their speed or break some tackles. And that's what he had. So his stats are kind of inflated. And I'm just not high on Dwayne Haskins overall. I think that he has a lot of potential, but you can't draft for potential in the first round. First round picks and even second round picks are supposed to be able to produce right away or very quickly. Haskins is going to have to sit and learn for a year, maybe even 2. A team like the Bengals could be beneficial for him. I don't see the Giants as a good fit for him because he's going to have to play sooner or later. Eli is not able to play for another year after this year. he really should honestly be considering retirement this year, unless he was going to be a backup or a mentor role like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type when he's with the Jets. And if things go south, then you put Eli back in. But I just don't see it. I don't think that he's ready yet. His feet and his lower body are one of my biggest concerns with him. He can't separate his upper and lower body. Basically, what that means is that sometimes as a quarterback, yes, you want your feet to be pointing where you're throwing ultimately in a perfect situation, but obviously it's the NFL. You're not going to have a perfect situation every time. If you are looking this way, you want your shoulders pointing where you're throwing, as well as your feet. So you want your lower body to be in the same direction as your shoulders and where you're throwing. But ultimately, sometimes you have to be able to, you're looking here, your feet are pointing that way, turn the body and throw here while your feet are pointing that way. He can't do that. Most of his interceptions came off moments like that. It's kind of hard to explain it when you can't see my whole body. And this is why I want a video to better show you with visuals and whatnot. But we'll just have to get through it for now. You have to be able to separate it because it makes you a better quarterback. If you have to turn your whole body, that takes time. And with the defensive ends that we have today, DeMarcus Lawrence, Frank Clark, D. Ford, Nick Bosa coming out of college, Joey Bosa, these guys, they're going to get to you quick. You don't have time to adjust like that. And somebody who needs to adjust their feet perfectly for every throw, it's not going to work. And that's a very hard thing to coach. Sometimes those things are so embedded that you can't fix it. So that's something that you really have to think about if you're going to draft him. Now, another thing is tight window throws. That is considered, when you're watching film, I view those as NFL throws, pro caliber throws, whatever you want to call it. In the NFL, you're not going to have a lot of separation. Wide open is like 3 yards separation. That's a lot in the NFL. In college, he would be throwing, sometimes guys with 6 yards of separation, 7 yards of separation. That is wide open. Like, when a normal person thinks of wide open, you're thinking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yards. And sometimes he would be throwing to guys like that. And a lot of that is scheme-based for him, and that's why it was so easy for him to get all those yards. Now, I'm not discounting anything he did. He had a very solid year, but I don't see it. Those tight window throws were not there. He doesn't have the arm strength to force it in there and zip it in. So, if you ask me, no, he's not worth a first-round pick. Like I said, I think he should be somewhere where he can learn for a year, maybe two, like the Bengals. You know, the Andy Dalton era is not totally over yet. He's still okay enough to get them to the playoffs, but they're going to be rebuilding. So he has somebody at least halfway decent to learn behind. Now, the Packers would be the absolute best fit for him because they are thinking about drafting a quarterback tonight, and he can learn behind Rodgers. Rodgers is going to be there for another 2 to 3 years at least. So if you can learn behind Aaron Rodgers, who I personally think might be the greatest quarterback of all time, don't at me though, that's huge. That is huge. And it gives you plenty of time, and he has a great mind. He's not somebody who's just good at his craft. He does it with an extremely high football IQ, and you can get that from him if you sit and you learn. So if I'm Haskins, I want to go to somewhere like Green Bay. I want to go to somewhere like New England, where I can sit behind one of these great quarterbacks and learn. I don't want to play right away if I'm Haskins, because otherwise you see a Josh Rosen situation to where a team's giving up on you already. And there's a very good chance we're going to see Kyler Murray drafted at the first pick tonight. So let me know what you think about Dwayne Haskins below. Maybe we can start a little debate here. Who you think's going to take him, and what player you think your team's going to get tonight. I'll see you guys in the next video.